Recording in progress.
Charlie McCroubry,
I'm Councillor Charlie McCroubry, and I am the leader of the council.
Welcome everybody to today's meeting, which is a hybrid meeting. The meeting will be live streamed and recorded and will be available for viewing after the meeting. Should the live streaming fail, the meeting will continue and a recording will be available through the council's website following the conclusion of the meeting. Can I remind members that translation facilities are available and for those attending on Zoom to choose your language of choice. For those wishing to speak in the chamber, please raise your hand. For those on Zoom, please use the raise hand function. We'll alternate between speakers in the chamber and on Zoom. For those attending remotely, please note that those in the chamber will be able to use the chat facility. Committee members who are attending remotely are required to leave their camera on throughout the debate and when voting in order to maintain the integrity of the decision-making process. If you do need to leave the meeting temporarily, pop a message in the chat function so the Democratic Services Officer is aware and then let us know when you return. I expect everyone present participating in this meeting to conduct themselves appropriately, be respectful to each other. That applies to members, officers and everyone in the public gallery. Okay, so item Clontarf, first item, apologies for absence.
No apologies received.
Okay, item second item, declarations of interest, Code of Local Government. Members are reminded they must declare the existence and nature of the declared personal interest. Would any members like to declare an interest? Okay, no. So we'll move on to urgent matters. I'm not aware that we have any. Agenda item 4 is the minutes of the Conwy Harbour Advisory Committee. Those are on pages 4 to 6. Conrad Cromwell, I think you're going to take us through those.
Thank you, Leader. I'd like to present the minutes of the Conwy Harbour Advisory Committee held on Wednesday, the 2nd of October, on pages 4 to 6. You'll see there is a recommendation to Cabinet at the end of the report on page 6 that Cabinet be advised of the condition of the pontoons and moorings, their vulnerability and need for repair replacement, and consider supporting a capital business case for the works. It's a bit premature for Cabinet to ask Cabinet to support a business case at this time. They will come up in the round in future budget meetings. So, but those are the minutes, and I present them as a true record.
Okay, so thank you, Cromwell. I think we're happy to note the recommendation, but as you say, it'll need to be considered in the round with other capital business cases. Members, any questions or comments? Can I have Cromwell propose we accept the minutes? Can I have a seconder, please? Councillor Dillman, can we show we're in favour of accepting the minutes? Okay, wonderful. Item 5, announcements by the leader. Nothing for me at this moment in time. So agenda item 6 is announcements by the Chief Executive. Also nothing. So the first substantive item, agenda item 7, sits in the audit policy and performance portfolio. It's the Strategic Equality Plan Annual Report 23-24. It's on pages 7 to 6. We'll hand over to Councillor Chris Cater.
This is the Strategic Equality Plan Annual Report for 2023-2024. It's the first of 3 HR reports in front of us today. All 3 were the subject of thorough debate yesterday at overview and scrutiny. This first one is an annual piece of work where we comply with a legal requirement, but it's also very useful to highlight good practice from across the organisation. And there's no doubt that we do significant work to embed equality, diversity and inclusion into our culture. And you will know that I was particularly proud that we adopted the Unison Anti-Racism Charter last year. There has to be real substance in what we do. And to illustrate this, a progress report on actions taken is in the pack today, starting on page 69. I'd like to read out the very last point in the action plan, Leader, and that is under the title, "We will be anti-racist, not just non-racist in all we do." So this is a key goal within our Inclusive Conwy strategy, which incorporates our Anti-Racist Wales Action Plan, and our focus is ensuring that an anti-racist culture is embedded in all our services and that all staff understand the impact of racism and how they can be anti-racist. So I think that sets that out really clear. You'll remember that we adopted our Inclusive Conwy Plan 24-28 back in March this year. I've attended an elected member No Boundaries training session, and this is being rolled out to Conway management and all the staff. We've also included a local, more personal approach, and a feather in our cap belonging to the Inclusive Employers organisation means we have access to a wealth of information and training, which is cost neutral. I look at Amanda here, and supports self-directed training. From page 11 onwards, each equality objective is analysed for progress, leader, and I'm just going to rattle off a few highlights. The first one is all secondary schools participate in the Kiva anti-bullying campaign. Then we have Conway's Museum Service launched an out and about LGBTQ plus series in library spaces. Our museum service is working with people in North Wales and Central Africa to tell the story of the African Institute in Colwyn Bay. That's really interesting. We have a dementia listening campaign. We launched a supported employment pathway for individuals with a learning disability. Conway and Denbighshire have together appointed an autism lead officer. The Conway Youth Service became a Rainbow Flag Award holder. I know Councillor Julie sitting next to me is very proud of that. And together with a few Cabinet colleagues, I was at the launch of a new Conway Leisure Services Fit Conway activity inclusion model to support full access to physical activity and sport. Leader, you'll remember, because you were there, that 3 young people gave accounts of their very successful personal journeys. So I'm going to stop with the list of good news there, but there is plenty more showcase, and it's all part of the report. Looking forwards, I'm hopeful that the extra capacity we are building up with an extra post will ensure the volume of work coming from the Welsh Government's Anti-Racist Wales Action Plan and the LGBTQ Action Plan for Wales is focused on fully. And we must be mindful that our socio-economic duty. Fran Lewis, Head of People and Performance, Josh Cripps and all the team, well, it is a team of 2, have been really proactive. And I thank Josh particularly for putting all this equality-related evidence together for us today. Naomi van der Bill has just been appointed our new Diversity, Equity and Inclusion Manager. Naomi brings a wealth of professional and lived experience, and as a Conway employee in another sphere, she has already been a member of our Equality, Diversity and Inclusion Steering Group. Just to remind you, that was set up in January and is chaired by our Chief Executive. So, Cabinet members, the recommendation is on page 7, and I would like to propose that Cabinet approve the Strategic Equality Plan Annual Report 2023 to 2024. Thanks, Leader.
Okay, thank you, Chris, for taking us through that so professionally. I know it's an area of work that you put an awful lot of time and effort into, and rightly so. I'll open up members for any questions, comments or observations. Councillor Julie.
Thank you, Leader, and thanks, Chris, for the report. You know, we're often talking about budgets, talking about difficult issues, and it's good to see something positive here, that we're looking to be as inclusive as possible, which I know we are. I've been a member for 12 years now, and find every aspect, every area I work in, you touched on the youth service there, they do wonderful things, and that's why they've won the Gold Award, Gold Standard Award across Wales. In our schools, we're working to address attainment gaps, whether that's those who are in marginalised groups or disabled ethnic minorities. So yeah, it's just really encouraging, it's really positive, and it's great to see that we're building on that, and we'll continue to build on that. And obviously time shifts day to day, doesn't it, and things that we deal with change, obviously IT, all sorts of different things and new approaches that we find to things. So yeah, it's really encouraging. I'm happy to second this and to just thank everybody involved. And I think that's across all areas of the local authority. You know, it's really positive, the interaction that users tell us that they have with services, certainly that I as a member have with services, with officers, with the young people that I meet. I've attended the youth council a number of times, and we've touched on these subjects, and it's really positive to hear their perspective. You'll often hear youth councils in each school look to address this, you know, and that's because they're able to have those conversations that years ago, certainly when I was at school, they just didn't take place, and they do now, and they're encouraged to share whatever it may be that makes us different or the same. It's just really positive. It's empowering for them to feel that they have a voice, and I think this just builds on that, and I'm really happy to support it. Thanks, Leader.
York, Julie. Any other members like to comment? Emily.
Yeah, I think there's always more work to do, isn't there? But I think, as Councillor Chris has highlighted, this is a really good, we're making really good steps here. And I think, you know, we should be proud that we've done the Unison Anti-Racism Charter, and it's been really good to be able to pull some of that work together and then implementing that in practice of what that means in our everyday workings, because as you quite rightly pointed out, there's a big difference between not being racist and being anti-racist, and that goes for everything all the way across all kind of protected characteristics. So I don't for a second think that we've done it and it's all great and we can take it off and move on, but this is a really good step forward. So thank you for bringing the report, and thanks to the officers for their work on this.
Okay, thanks, Emily. Any other comments or observations, members? I guess from my point of view, yeah, really pleased to see this. Equality should be at the heart of everything we do, and there's some really positive progress. But as you say, there's always room for improvement, and you always need to sort of look every year and see what you are doing and see whether it's still at the forefront of the actions that we take. I had the pleasure of attending that inclusive sport event, Chris. I thought that was really uplifting, seeing the difference it made to those young people's lives. And as you say, Julie, at schools, seeing how engaged our young people and how thoughtful they are about the process is really, really encouraging and to be applauded. So we've had a proposer and a seconder. Can members show if they're in favour of accepting the recommendation? Super. So we'll move on to 7.2, which is the Employment Monitoring Report 23 to 24. That's on pages 69 to 135. So I'll hand back to Councillor Chris for that.
Thank you, Leader. This second mainly factual report is a substantial snapshot of employment data on the 31st of March 2024 for all categories of our staff. It gives a plethora of data and detail on recruitment outcomes, training, disciplinary and grievance cases, and leavers statistics for the year 23-24. We abide by statutory duty legislation, so we provide gender data by grade, salary, job, family, and contract type, and you will find a breakdown of the information by protected characteristic. I want to highlight a few things. The gender balance remains pretty static. 72% of our staff are female, and we know certain areas, for instance, social care, are historically and fundamentally, I suppose, female orientated. 88% of part-time roles continue to be held by female employees, so that's an interesting statistic. 29% of the permanent and fixed-term workforce are aged 55 and above, and there's quite an even balance in the other age groups. 3.4 lists the percentage of data held by category, and I just want to read out this section, if you bear with me, as it's formed quite a bit of debate at scrutiny yesterday. So that's 3.4. We hold the following data for staff in Conway: 100% age and sex in line with HMRC pension requirements, so we have that data. 99% marital civil partnership, and then it drops down to 60% ethnicity, 57% disability, 54% religion belief, 54% sexual orientation, and 51% gender identity. Data captured in all categories improved by 1 to 5% this year, and I find that very encouraging. A new equality monitoring survey has been launched during National Inclusion Week, which was last month, and we plugged into that very effectively. I don't know if everyone went to the events, but I did, and a lot of staff went to Areas Park to a big event there, which is important for just informing everyone and keeping everyone aware of what was being offered. So that survey has gone out and will be part of an ongoing campaign to improve and update data for staff. Interestingly, the headcount stood at 4,771, slightly more than last year. 3.5 in the report. I apologize for this, but there's a slight typo mistake there. It's not 4121, it's 4771. So that needs to be amended. In terms of staffing levels, in a large organization, I think we realize there are services which have shrunk and others via grant funding have been able to increase the headcount, and there might be a fixed term increase there. It has also been wise to recruit to reduce agency staff. I think the benefits of that is obvious. Maternity leave cover is a factor, as is cover for long-term absence over 4 weeks. Some services we know have shrunk. In fact, people and performance is one of them, where small services had 3 posts deleted, and long-term recruitment drag has been held for 3 more vacant posts. So we know that restructures are happening all the time to increase efficiencies. So I think it's very apparent that statistics will fluctuate, and this is the position on the 31st of March 2024. Every vacancy in the authority is carefully scrutinised, but we all know we have areas of growing demand. I can think of 2 straight away: housing and social care. Just remember that in some of the 13 equality areas, the information may not be reflective of the overall workforce. For instance, regarding religion belief, sexual orientation and gender identity, as prefer not to say leader has to be an option in all our surveys. Whilst the overall number of ethnic minority, and I'll use global majority here because that's the terminology that is now preferred, applicants, and the number of those shortlisted and appointed is higher than in previous years, the proportion of applicants shortlisted and appointed is lower than for other applicants. So this does need our focus, and we will be reviewing the recruitment training offered to managers as part of a wider equality, diversity and inclusive training review. Inclusion, I think we're all agreed here at Cabinet, has to be embedded throughout our systems. Finally, the looking forward section, which starts on page 134, lists actions identified and steps to address areas of note from the 2023-2024 report. Training I've mentioned, and the work on data collection and analysis I've mentioned, but we are also updating our individual HR policies, and the next one coming to Cabinet will be the anti-harassment one, which is just being worked on at the moment. So we also want to talk actively to the various communities to see what we can accomplish together. There are ongoing workshops with local community cohesion officers, the North Wales Public Sector Equality Network, and our own employability team. And these will look at barriers to employment and delivering some useful tips and guidance to address barriers for minority groups. Cabinet needs to approve the publication of this report by the 31st of March 2025. So the recommendation is on page 70, right at the top there, 2.2. And I propose, Leader, that Cabinet approve the publication of this employment monitoring report. Thank you.
Okay, thanks once again, Chris. Again, I'll open up members to any questions or observations you may have. Councillor Conway.
Thank you, and thank you, Chris, for the report and the officer's work. The recruitment is challenging in certain fields. I'm aware from the ERF perspective that getting skilled workers in the lines of mechanics and things of this nature are challenging. I'm glad to believe that the new government is looking at more apprenticeships, and hopefully we can participate in any apprenticeship schemes that do come up. But certainly I'd like to see the opportunity for some of our shortfalls or some more vacancies can be addressed by apprenticeship schemes.
Okay, thanks, Cromwell. Councillor Jeff?
Chris, I often think the fact that staff get overlooked because you're so busy doing something else that you sort of carry on. But one point that does always interest me is the stress and anxiety that comes up in terms of illness. It highlights, in fact, on the monthly reports that I see, and I'm wondering whether there should be something within this actually at some time which actually shows what we're trying to do to address it. I mean, it may not be work related; it may be sort of it's home related. I don't know, but it has an impact. I would just raise that point.
I bring this on.
Can you wait till the next report? Covering that in the next report.
No, leader.
Report.
Yeah, I think the patience is a virtue, Jeff. The next report does that address that. I'll just bring the chief executive in.
I'm not going to leave the point, but it is there. Yeah, I guess on Councillor Cronley's point really around apprenticeships and graduates, I think it's incredibly important. We in local government are feeling a bit of a squeeze at the moment because, and I'm going to be frank, that wages haven't caught up with other sectors, and therefore there are risks for us, and therefore one way of addressing that is graduates and apprenticeship schemes. We've been doing it piecemeal across the authority. Of course, we would like to do more, and that's where I guess if government funding is available, we will be taking up the opportunity at the first available opportunity to expand what we have. We know that there have been some really good schemes in social care, for example, recently, which have been incredibly successful and give our young aspiring people locally the opportunity to work with us. And also I know that Matt has recruited as well into his team in terms of trainees and graduates. So yes, we will be taking the opportunity when they arise, but we would like more opportunities if they're available. So thanks for raising it, Councillor Conroy.
Okay, thanks, Liz.
I'd like to thank Councillor Chris for taking us through the report in such a clear manner that it's easy for us to understand a lengthy report, you know, the way that you praise it down. So thank you very much indeed for that. And I do think, you know, going on to what Councillor Jeff said about stress and anxiety, it is here. And I know that we have lots of services that we provide to staff that they're able to avail themselves of. And it would be good at some stage to, I suppose there'll be another report coming again, but before long, won't there, about what we are doing about that. But also I'd like to praise the departments who are taking on apprentices and looking at modernising the way that we work while having to deal with crisis after crisis as well. It's not easy. So I thank the officers for all the work that they're doing in that area. Thank you.
As you say, a very factual report, Chris. I think they should all be factual, but you know, really interesting data there. Really pleased that we sort of look at areas where things seem a bit out of kilter, as you said, in terms of global majority, the success rate in interviews. I know, Fran, I think it was the PSP level, there was a report about assistance that could be given, sort of in terms of language skills and things like that, to get sort of people over the line in terms of what they were missing in order to secure those positions. So I'm encouraged that, you know, that's what we'll be looking at and seeing how we can look to improve that. So on that basis, if there's no other questions or observations, I'm quite happy to second your recommendations, and they were supported by scrutiny as well. So we've got a proposal and a second. Members, can we show if we're in favour of accepting the report? Again, huge thanks to staff for what was a really big and important piece of work. So Chris, the third part of your portfolio is the Workforce Dashboard end of year report. Again, it's for the year 23 to 24, and that report's on pages 136 to 155.
Yeah, so this report details attendance, age profile, turnover, and workforce headcount for our local authority. The dashboard sets out for us totals of all services and subsets of information data relating to schools and non-school services. So we know we've had a recruitment challenges in many areas. Also, while the report details measures to support staff attendance. We know we still have significant staff resource costs when posts must be covered to ensure service continuity. We've got to provide a working environment that promotes health and well-being for our employees. I think we all agree with that. And I welcome this particular report as it demonstrates where we need to focus support, giving line managers the right tools, as we know staff are our most important and valued asset. The days lost per full-time equivalent sits at about 12. But this is an average across the local authority, and it's not a percentage. The majority of staff, it must be remembered, have little or no sickness absence at all. And if you look at the absence balance, we have in fact less people off, but for a longer period. Attendance is reviewed and a dashboard shared every month with heads of service. We have a comprehensive attendance management policy, which provides advice on every stage of attendance management. And there are the regular one-to-one check-ins as part of the Conway conversation. I know, every SPR I've attended has identified staff capacity as an issue. I'm sure you've been to these SPRs, you've heard that as well, Leader. The top 5 reasons for absence are on page 149. So number 1, stress and anxiety. 2, non-specified hospital treatment. 3, infection communicable disease. 4, musculoskeletal, and 5, digestive and abdominal. So I've read out the 5 ones there. There is a high level of stress absence. Councillor Jeff's just mentioned that. It is number 1, but we know that each case has its own complex case. Waiting for hospital treatment, family personal circumstances, the cost of living crisis, and of course work issues are all there. Our main focus has to be preventative. We know more efficient ways of working are on the agenda. We're always talking about this. Repetitively, we have to make cuts and change ways of working, make ourselves more efficient, but staff need to know that they're not expected to continue to do more with less. We also have an employee service BivUp, which is available to all staff. And regarding musculoskeletal issues for absence, managers can, of course, refer to the Occupational Health Service. So, Leader, the recommendation is on page 137 at 2.2. And I propose that Cabinet endorse the actions being taken to manage staff attendance. I propose that. Thanks.
Diolch eto, Chris. Councillor Tilly.
Thanks, Chris, and thanks for that report too. It's interesting, isn't it? And it's really important that we take the opportunity to look at our staff, look at the reasons for absence. Certainly is important, and it is concerning to see that stress and anxiety is the top, both for schools and non-schools. But I don't know if you want to go into more detail at all, Chris, around what we provide. Obviously there is opportunity there. I know we've run sessions with schools, we've run sessions with head teachers at looking at ways to manage stress and for them to work with their teams as well. And I know that's the same across departments. And obviously we have the Care First and different things that we do as a local authority. I just kind of wanted to touch on the agency figure there. It's hard seeing that in isolation, how that compares to what we've had previously. 6.5 million is a lot of money for agency staff. And a couple of things I would say around that. Obviously, there are certain areas where you have to have a staff member that's there to do the job that needs to be done. Totally appreciate that. But I think we definitely need to do some more work around this area, because agency staff, obviously, firstly, are more expensive than having our own staff, often considerably more expensive. And also it's the lack of experience they have then in how we do things. They may have worked in another local authority, but every local authority does things differently. So that gives added pressure to staff then to work with the agency staff who sometimes are only there briefly. Excuse me. So I think it's an area that we need to really look at. Where does that budget sit? Is that something that's approved in terms of agency staff? Do we have a time limit? Excuse me, I don't know where this throat's come from. Try and clear it. Do we have a time limit to agency staff? Because I would hate to see agency staff in place for more than, 3 months or certainly 6 months at the absolute most. And I think we need to be careful. I know we have a recruitment drag on where we're approving or not approving posts, but actually there is a knock-on effect to that because some of those posts we have to have. And so they then are having to backfill with agency staff, and then that incurs a cost for departments. So I think these are all things, I appreciate that's quite a specific point to raise as part of this report, but all of this helps. If we can reduce that agency cost down, then we can help the stress that staff members are feeling, because that all contributes to it, doesn't it? But yeah, and I guess we just need to continue to work together. I mean, the staff are amazing. We see it across all areas. Obviously, I see it in the areas that I oversee and somewhat generally across the local authority as well. They are doing more with less constantly, year in, year out. And, they have to be praised for how they're stepping up to the plate, staying a bit later, taking a few extra cases, whether that's in legal, whether that's in social work, whether that's ERF, and they're staying and doing an extra shift to go around and pick up collections. And thank goodness we have that. It's a balance, isn't it, that we need to get right, that we don't tip that and we end up seeing attendance figures worsen. But yeah, we need to do everything we can to make sure that what we're doing helps to reduce those pressures. And I think that, yeah, some of those areas are the way to go. But yeah, massive thanks to the staff to continue to come in every day and work in very, very different place to where they started, some of them 20, 30 years ago, and they step up year in, year out. And yeah, I just wanted to take this opportunity to thank them. So thanks, Chris.
I'll just bring Amanda, Finance Officer, on that point.
Yeah, just to respond, Councillor Julie, in terms of some of the specific issues that you talk about on agency. So as you'll be aware, we've I think it's been in place now a year or 12, a couple of years, had the contract with Matrix, and I think what that has allowed us is given us a much better corporate oversight in terms of our use of agency, because I think perhaps we were less cited on the global position in using agency before that. So a couple of things with Matrix is A, it gives us that oversight. B, it also makes sure that we're getting value for money. So we're setting rates within certain parameters, etc., that we're prepared to pay. And certainly I can talk from personal experience that I occasionally get approaches through HR about the fact we can't get somebody through an agency, through the Matrix contract, on the rate we're prepared to pay, and can we flex on that, etc. So there is challenge around that. I'd also confirm that agency, anytime an agency goes over 12 weeks, it has to go through the vacancy control group that we've got in place. In actual fact, I've had a recent conversation with Fran. Actually, we're considering reducing that time limit down, actually, to be much shorter. I think to pick up on some of those issues, and I think also in the context of the general spending controls that we've got in place, that we've just introduced, to sort of bring some of that thinking in there. In terms of the budgets, I think individual services, some services have got bespoke agency budgets because of the nature of their business. So for argument's sake, I think ERF have a limited, because obviously they will always have a potential of needing a driver or whatever. I think most other services would be funding the agency from the displaced staff budget that's not being used because of that. And I think, again, just to reassure you that through the challenge that HR provide, I think there is quite often pushback around, well, why are you continuing to use agency, as opposed to, as you say, filling the underlying post and being able to bring somebody in then who is going to become a Conwy member of staff and understand the processes, etc. So there is quite a lot of work ongoing with it. But I you know, I absolutely take the challenge that you've made, and I think we still, you know, can do and need to do more to monitor and make sure that we're using our resource to best effect. Because as you say, agency costs a lot more than the underlying staff member, and I guess there is the unfortunate side effect that actually for certain professions, some people prefer to be an agency worker because they like they might get paid more, B, they like the freedom, like the ability to chop and change, and so I think in some services, particularly I think social care, I think we've got that little bit of a challenge as well. But yeah, you know, definitely on our, you know, we've done a lot of work over the last couple of years to try and get a much better control of it, and but I absolutely take your point that, you know, it's something we need to continue to do.
Just bring in the chief executive.
Yeah, just to expand on that point, Amanda's explained more or less everything, but in terms of vacancy drag, so the vacancy control process that we have, when we have applications through in terms of filling vacancies, the element of, well, if we don't fill this, we'll have to get an agent, it is a part of the equation when we consider it. So clearly there's no point having drag if it costs more. So that is definitely something that we're seeing. That and also just to give some reassurance around vacancy control. So for example, I think the panel met this morning and they've come through to us and we're meeting tomorrow. So there's only a day between both meetings. So there's no process drag for us in terms of that. We might challenge back around vacancy drag, but all the elements, as Amanda mentioned, are considered as part of that process. So hopefully that gives some reassurance, but clearly, you know, there is more to be done. We don't say that it's all sorted. It certainly isn't. But yeah, and we've been doing that since I think the beginning of the year. I think so. So yeah.
Okay. Any other comments, members? I think from my point of view, yeah, really pleased to see this report. I think I'm a big fan of benchmarking. You know, this is an issue across all councils and for the same reasons that we're given in terms of stress. But it was interesting, Chris, as you noted, there are a small amount of individuals off for a very long time. I don't think we can move away from the impact that increasing waiting lists for hospital treatment will have on an impact. If you're not fit to work and your waiting time for that has doubled, we know that's happened in quite a lot of cases. Well, clearly that's going to have a significant effect on the pressures, and obviously treatment for stress and anxiety isn't in a very good place either. So we'll continue to do everything we can to support our staff. But like you, I'd like to add my thanks for the incredible work they do in what often is quite difficult situations. So I'll just check on that. We've had a poser. Did we have a? We didn't have a seconder. Do we have a seconder? Julie, you happy to second that? So we got a proposer and a seconder member. So can we show for in favour of accepting the recommendation then? Okay. So item 8, exempt item, Local Government Act 1972, Section 100A and Schedule 12A, access to information. To consider passing a resolution under the provisions of Section 100A brackets 4 of the above Act to exclude the public and press from the meeting during consideration of the following items, as it is likely that if present there will be disclosure to them of exempt information as defined in paragraph 14 of Part 4 of Schedule 12A to the Local Government Act 1972. Can we have a proposal that we go into private session? Julie, seconder. I'm making sure we're in favour. Okay, so we'll just give it a minute. Members, thank you.